Update. Neighbor 40 female keeps showing up unannounced to my 24 male house. I recently moved into a new house in a small gated community over the summer. This is the first time I've lived in a house since I was little. When I moved in, I received a lot of welcome gifts from neighbors since it's a very tight-knit community. This is how I met most of my neighbors, including Dana and her husband. Dana is my next-door neighbor. The first time we met, Dana came to my front door with her husband and 3 sons to introduce themselves. They brought me homemade cookies as a welcome gift. Her sons were really into dirt bikes and saw mine in the garage while I was moving in. I told them they could come over and check them out anytime they wanted. I was just being nice. Dana never really said anything or gave off any red flags. The next week, I was at work and got a motion notification from one of my cameras. It was video of Dana by herself looking into a window on the side of my house. I thought maybe she was checking to see if I was home and didn't think much of it. Later that day, I got a text from her asking when I'd be home since her sons wanted to come over and check out my bikes. I replied that I'd be working late and she responded that she'd let her sons know. Nothing else happened for a few weeks. The second event was on a Saturday night. She knocked on my front door and asked if I'd like to come over for dinner. I didn't really have much going on, so I said sure. I went over to her house, expecting her family to be there. Nope, it was just her. She said her family was visiting a relative. I didn't want to be rude, so I ended up staying. Dana is a big talker, so I barely got a word in that night. It felt strange, but it was just a conversation. A few days later, I saw her husband, Chris, while checking the mail. He asked me if I enjoyed Dana's cooking. I responded that it was great and that I wished he could have been there. So I guess he knew about us having dinner and was fine with it. The third event happened a few days ago. My camera caught Dana walking in my backyard by herself, looking into the shed. I confronted her on the phone and said she was just looking for a shovel. I informed her that my tools were in the garage and made sure to let her know I could see everything on my cameras. She apologized for not asking me before coming over. Later that day, she sent me a picture of my boat in a driveway, asking if I could take her out on it. I left her on red. The latest event happened last night. I had my somewhat new girlfriend over at the house. We were grilling in the backyard, having a good time, when all of a sudden, Dana showed up with her boys and literally self-invited her family to dinner. It was extremely awkward for everyone. I tried telling them that I didn't have enough for everyone, but Dana claimed her family wasn't that hungry. Dana didn't leave until my girlfriend left. I'm extremely confused if Dana is into me or just has no social awareness. The only thing keeping me from straight up confronting her is that we are neighbors and have to live next to each other. Her husband has been nice and doesn't give off any strange vibes. What do I tell her to leave me alone? Do I need to wait for her to do something again? Please help. Now for the top advice before reading the update. She's a taker. She just pushes and pushes, trying to get as much attention and crap as possible. Tell her to buzz off. Well, she's the HOA president, unfortunately. This woman thinks she owns your house. I hate neighbors like this. Opie said she's the HOA president. He's so screwed. Oh no. I was leaning heavy for her being into him, and that may still be the case. But there is undoubtedly some power tripping at play knowing she's the HOA president. Considering HOAs can sometimes get things escalated to the point of evicting people from their own homes, I'd be the wariest person in the neighborhood if I were Opie. Get blinds for your windows and keep them shut. Motion sensor lights. No trespassing signs. Get a security system. Just call the cops. Going into your property looking for a shovel is just testing the waters. Give her an inch and she'll take a mile and your life will be misery. Better she hates you than steals from you. I have blinds on the house. In the video, it looks like she was trying to find a window that was open. When I first was moving in, I left my garage open and went to lunch. A box of my clothes labeled clothes was missing. At the time, I thought maybe I lost it in the moving process, but now I think she had something to do with it. Oh, holy smokes. Nightmare scenario. I asked 2 different neighbors about her and they both said Dana was an awesome neighbor to have. Now for the update 2 weeks later. I wasn't expecting the original post to blow up the way it did. I'd like to thank everyone for their advice. Turns out the people who said she was into me were right. Dana texted me last Thursday letting me know that her family was going out of town for the weekend. She said she would be lonely and wanted to know if I'd keep her company. She said something like she was grateful to have such a young and strong man in her life, referring to me. I'm 90% sure that means she's into me. I politely declined by telling her that I would be with my girlfriend. Friday night, I was chilling with my girlfriend at home, and Dana knocked on the door. I'm so thankful for my girlfriend because she let Dana have it. We didn't hear anything from Dana the entire weekend. I guess Dana is now mad because she issued an HOA violation for my trash cans being in the wrong place. She was taking pictures of my girlfriend's car parked on the street for whatever reason. Yesterday, I had a conversation with one of my neighbors who let me know that Dana and her husband are apparently in an open relationship because her husband is bi. Anyways, not really my problem, and I'll just deal with them as my neighbors. Ever since my girlfriend had that talk with her, Dana hasn't been on my property. Thanks again for the help. I'd go to the HOA and threaten them with a sexual harassment suit if she keeps it up with the fines and pictures. Yes, but make sure you frame it to the HOA as they are enabling her harassment, they are a vehicle for her harassment, they are making you feel attacked and harassed for not sleeping with her. You plan to hold them liable for it. Don't let them tell you it's between you and her. Tell them that if they continue, you'll be sending them a certified letter with the same information so that you have it on record that you notified them of their role in harassing you. You might have to lawyer up because she will make your life miserable. Save those texts. Have someone testimony your side. Make sure your cameras also record audio and make a diary of things she is overreacting as an HOA. Things will escalate at some point, and you might have to order a protective distance from her and another appointed HOA to supervise her house. Remember to check those HOA rules, item by item. Neighbor sounds like a creep. She sounds like a total psycho. If she's already retaliating against OP by reporting his trash cans to the HOA and taking pictures of his girlfriend's car, then I wonder how she's going to escalate things. Her being the president of their HOA really complicates things. Do what you can to protect yourself. Never be alone with her. She could make up false accusation against you. She definitely sounds like the type to do this too. Completely unhinged, also desperate AF. Next story. My 40 female and my husband 41 male together 6 years. He snooped on my phone and found something I did 16 years ago. Why is he mad? Backstory on my original post. For months, my husband has been suspicious that I'm cheating, even though I've never even messaged another man since before our first date. He snooped on my phone and found a message from 16 years ago. 10 years before we got together, where I was short on money and sent a mechanic some nudes in lieu of payment for supplying and fitting an alternator. He called me all sorts of names, and I got mad and told him I'd never trust him again and that I thought he was projecting. On to the update. Like many of you suggested, he was projecting. He's the one who's cheating. I left to stay with my sister for a few days after I wrote that post. While driving past the Premier Inn near her house, I saw his car outside. I waited by it for 3 hours, and eventually he emerged with another woman. He said it was the first time that he thought we'd split up. She turned to him and said, "What are you talking about? Who is this?" referring to me. He literally ran off like a coward. I spoke to the woman, who turned out to be lovely. She said they'd been seeing each other for over a year, but he told me he was living with his religious parents after leaving his wife. That's why they could never go back to his house and always got hotels. She was such a kind young woman, and I ended up having to console her and even took her home myself. As for us, I'm back at home, and he is now staying at his parents' house. His parents were very disappointed in him when they heard the news and have been lovely to me. I've started divorce proceedings, but I imagine it'll take about a year to finalize. Take no prisoners, girl. Ask his lover to testify in your divorce proceedings on your behalf. We won't need to go to court, hopefully, if he just accepts the divorce. A person as controlling and manipulative as him is not going to just accept the divorce. He'll keep you dangling and hoping and use it to keep pulling you back in. Trust me, you don't want to have to depend on this guy's word about anything. It's completely up to you. But if you have decided you want to get divorced, then you should contact a lawyer. They give you a free consultation and greatly facilitate the process. If he's going to be cooperative about getting divorced like he says, then getting a lawyer will only make things smoother because you won't have to figure out which forms to fill out and file. Incredible that he told her he was staying with his parents, and now he is. Yep, it's like he willed it into happening. Lol. He manifested and it happened. I was married to a serial cheater and it may suck a bit now, but you are on your way to bigger and better things. That was very nice of you to console her. Please be sure to tend your own emotions as well. Gotta look out for number 1. To be honest, I was already 80% certain I was going to divorce him after the name calling and snooping, so this didn't devastate me as much as it would normally would. I really hope his mother and father know that he abandoned the girl he conned into a relationship at the motel, and that you were kind enough to take her home. What a man. I told him he abandoned a 23-year-old 30 miles from her home. Last story. My 37 female husband, 39 male, went to a work dinner with a woman and was gone 5 hours. Wasn't where he said he'd be, and wouldn't respond to my calls and texts. I kicked him out and he says I'm overreacting. Can anyone help me make sense of what happened here? My husband of 6 years works in a field where sales reps are constantly vying to get him to use their products. One way they do this is by hosting dinners at upscale restaurants, think expensive steakhouses, and inviting groups to attend a presentation about their product in exchange for a free steak dinner. So far this year, my husband has attended upwards of 40 of these dinners. I find this a little excessive, especially considering we have a 3-year-old and a 5-month-old at home, and I rarely get a reciprocal night out. For context, we've been out together without the kids only 4 times in the past year. I've asked him to cut back on these dinners, but he refuses, saying he hopes to leverage these relationships into brand-sponsored speaking opportunities that could become a temporary source of secondary income. To his credit, this has happened before, and he made good money during his stint as a speaker. However, anytime I complain about the number of dinners he attends, he accuses me of not caring about our financial situation, or even outright trying to sabotage it. From my understanding, he attends far more of these dinners than most people in his field. Now on to the dinner in question. Last week, he forwarded me a screenshot of a text from a sales rep who said she would be in town for 2 nights and wanted to have dinner with just him while she was there. This is fairly unusual as most dinners are group affairs with friends and colleagues. On one other occasion, he met with a sales rep one-on-one, but it was an older man. This time, it was an attractive woman around our age. I looked her up on social media. They agreed to meet on Monday at 6:30 at a nice tapas restaurant in an expensive part of town because, according to my husband, it was close to her hotel. While this made sense, I raised an eyebrow at his phrasing. He got annoyed. But I pointed out that this was a dumb thing to say to your wife when you're meeting a woman for dinner at a nice restaurant. He left the house at 6:04. For context, I am extremely sleep deprived. I'm up with a new baby several times a night, and my husband has refused to participate in night feedings. By 9, I was exhausted and really wanted to sleep, but the baby was colicky and crying, and it was keeping my toddler awake. I texted my husband to ask when he thought he'd be home so I could have an idea how much longer I'd need to stay up. I said it was no big deal, just give me a ballpark estimate. He didn't respond. He wears an Apple Watch and is constantly responding to texts. So it was annoying that he couldn't give me an ETA after 3 hours at dinner. I called him at 9:15 and he sent me straight to voicemail. I called again at 9:30 with the same results. At this point, I texted him and said I was calling the restaurant. When I did, the host told me the restaurant was empty and confidently stated that no one matching my husband's description had been there that night. I texted him that I was calling his parents to see if they had heard from him. They hadn't. Finally, at almost 10, I texted him and told him not to come home. 15 minutes after my last text, he sent me an automated text from his GPS app saying he'd be home by 10:20. I texted him again and told him to go to his parents' house. He showed up anyway and I wouldn't let him in. He didn't have keys. He said I was acting crazy. He claimed the tapas restaurant was more like his sports bar, so they went to a nicer place across the street. He said his phone was in his pocket on silent, though he had to have declined calls to send me straight to voicemail. He said he was trying to generate revenue for our family. He told me my self-esteem wasn't his problem. He said my behavior had better be a symptom of PMDD. He accused me of creating events in my mind. Long story short, I didn't let him in. He slept at his parents' house and came by the next morning to get his stuff. He's staying with them again tonight after attending yet another dinner, and likely will be for the foreseeable future. I think his behavior was shady and disrespectful to me, but he thinks I've blown the whole thing out of proportion. I'm so tired that I can't make sense of it. I need to ask, am I justified in my anger, or is he right that I'm blowing this out of proportion? Thanks in advance. Now for the top comments. He said a lot of things, but he didn't seem to say, I'm sorry. That's because he's not sorry. Yep, my ex was hunting women on TikTok and LinkedIn. I got justification about his needs, then was mocked about being upset about it, instead of an apology. When they aren't sorry, they don't apologize. It's that simple. He's showing you who he is. We just have to come to terms with that reality versus the one we want. The best case scenario here is your husband just doesn't give a damn about you or your family. That's best case scenario. Worst is what's more likely that he's cheating. I'm a doctor and have been to these dinners. Your husband is the big fish here, not the rep. They're trying to impress him, not the other way around. There's absolutely no reason he can't step away and take your calls or end it early. And most importantly, no reason he can't say no to dinners in favor of being a father and husband. Also, on what planet does this 35-year-old rep hold the keys to him becoming a lucrative speaker? All of it is BS. Tell him if he's so concerned about financials, he should consider the cost of a divorce, alimony, and child support.